So, quick agenda. This is what we're going to be doing: who, what, why, how, where, and finally. And this is me. Some of those details will come back up at the end. So if you want to get in touch with me, please do. I'm always happy to answer questions or interact with people, even when Rodney tweets me. I know that he does this to check whether I've got notifications on, which I have turned off, so you won't get any of that fun. You'll also remember that if you looked at last year's SQL Relay website, that there was a little GIF of me waving my arms around. I can promise you there is no liquid without a top on around my computer. So what's PowerShell? What is it all about? If you ask people about PowerShell, you'll get 1,000 different answers. According to Microsoft on MSDN, Windows PowerShell is a new Windows command line shell designed especially for system administrators. It includes an interactive prompt and a scripting environment that can be used independently or in combination. Blah, 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 blah. It's the replacement for the good old command prompt, but it's more than that. It is a shell that you can use, but it's also a scripting language, making use of all the .NET frameworks that you can get in there. Behind the scenes, it's pretty much powering everything that you see in Windows Server. All of the GUIs that you've got will be using PowerShell behind the scenes. There's a guy called Emin Atak who investigated all of this and showed what was going on. It also replaces the GUI. If you look at things like Server Core, if you're installing Server Core to reduce your footprint, to reduce the impact of Windows updates, then you'll be solely using PowerShell to manage your machines. And also, if you look at a lot of the Azure services, you can do far more with them in PowerShell than you can do via the GUI. And click. Thank you very much. So, why should we be using PowerShell? I get asked this question quite often, because what I really would like to be doing is, building new shiny things and spending a few hours exploring the best way to solve the particular problems and concentrating solely on writing and testing some complex procedure or script or solution to some problem, and completing documentation. I'd like to be able to spend I wouldn't like to be able to spend the time completing the documentation, but I know that I have to do it, and it's one of those things that for me I have to be concentrating solely on doing. Using PowerShell enables me to put a lot of my documentation within my PowerShell scripts anyway, and we'll talk about some of that later. What I end up doing is answering the phone, answering email, performing mundane, repetitive tasks. Oh, that was clever. There we go. Just like that. When I first started as DBA, I found that I spent more time with the interruptions than I did actually doing anything of any interest. So the answer: automate everything. If you are a DBA, I highly recommend that you read this blog by SQL Brit. It's called The Best DBAs Automate Everything. And when he says everything, he means absolutely everything. The definition of automation from Wikipedia is: automation is the use of machines, control systems, and information technologies to optimize productivity in the production of goods and the delivery of services. I think the important part there is the optimized productivity. Automation doesn't mean without human interaction. It doesn't mean scheduling things to completely happen by themselves. You can use that, but you can also automate by making sure that the same thing happens again and again when you press the button, but the human being still has to choose to press the button. What I do is automate as much as I possibly can, backups and restores throughout environments, and as many checks and automatic reports as I possibly can, I automate through PowerShell. And that's the answer to another answer to the question, why should we use PowerShell, is it enables you to look after tens, dozens, hundreds, thousands of servers and instances in the same way. You can consider them as a single server and just run your PowerShell scripts against them and make sure that everything happens. Of course, the important thing, PowerShell is not the only resource you should use. I know I am a PowerShell fanboy. I use it as much as I possibly can, but I completely appreciate that there are times when it is not the best resource to use. It will not be the answer to all of your automation problems, but it will answer an awful lot of them. So we use PowerShell to make repetitive tasks easier, to make more complex tasks less complex by encompassing many commands together, reducing the risk of human error, because everybody knows that humans get tired. It's a Friday lunchtime. Thank you very much for being here at the end of your week, but Friday afternoon is time when mistakes can happen, or first thing Monday morning when everything's really busy. Humans make mistakes, and it's just one of those things. If you can automate something through PowerShell, then you know that the same thing is happening again and again. So if you make a mistake, the same mistake will continuously happen, and you can then go back and ensure that you fix it. By using PowerShell in your disaster recovery scenarios, then because you will have tested them already, that everything will work. In case of disaster, we can run these scripts in this order with these parameters in, and we can bring our systems back to life. So let's make some repetitive tasks easier and less tedious. I use a load of functions, and hopefully they're all coming through now. These are all things that I've written and blogged about that I use to remove the mundane, boring tasks that come through every day. The questions from developers: what's the permission for this account? The question from auditors: when was this database last backed up? When was this server last backed up? Searching through error logs to find particular error messages. Creating users, dropping users, checking disk space. We can do all of those very, very quickly. So let's have a look. And hopefully you can now see a Windows PowerShell screen. Can somebody with a microphone shout if you cannot see that screen? No, good. So just to give you an idea, these are the servers that I've got running on my lab here at home. So the green lines are the servers and the blue lines are all databases, just so you can get an idea of what we've got running. Let's go in here. A quick cleanup. So a repetitive task that I get asked a lot, and I wrote this function because I was fed up of my server admins logging on to my SQL servers to open up Windows Explorer to see how much drive space there was available. And I said, what are you doing? Just do this. Show drive sizes and the server name. And very quickly you can see we get back a list of all the drives, what the volume names are, the sizes, and how much space there is free. And by using that function, enabling it to, giving it to the server team, it stopped them being logged onto my boxes when I was doing patching, because they left themselves logged on as well. But the advantage here with PowerShell is once you have gathered that information, it is an object. And once you have an object, you can do anything you like with it. So, for example, with drive sizes, we could very easily create a report, an HTML report, and email it, or we could insert the data into a database and report off it, or we can email it as an attachment or in the body of the script, in the body of the email, very quickly and very easily. Let's have a look. Here are my functions. So I have created all of these functions, as I said, and I got them all sitting here, and I load them all and I use them. You can see how they all get made on my blog. So when I started at my a couple of jobs ago, I had a few hundred databases, and people would come up and talk to me and say, could you help me with the database for X? I'd say, I have no idea where it is. What server is it on? And they'd look at me blankly. Oh, crikey. So then I have to turn around and ask the rest of my team. And that was the reason that I wrote this particular function. And the way this function works is that we get a load of servers into a variable here. And in my lab, I'm using a text file which just has a list of servers on each file. Obviously, when you have hundreds of instances like we do now on my current work, I no longer use the text file to do this. I have a DBA database with a list of all the servers and instances in it, and use invoke SQL command to grab the servers that you want. I'd highly recommend doing that because it makes life much more malleable for yourself. You can decide what servers and which environments you wish to target with your PowerShell scripts. So you could just choose the production environment if you just needed to run on those, or you could choose a particular system if you needed to do that. As long as you can query your DBA database for those instances, then you can grab them. But for this occasion, we just pull them straight out of a text file. And once we've done that, we do a little bit of manipulation with the input because you can't match. It's case insensitive, so we have to make everything all lowercase. And we have a look, and we go through each server for each server in servers. PowerShell is very clever. If you have a variable that ends in an S, like servers, and you put for each singular server in servers, it knows what you mean, and it will take the next item in that array and pass it into the loop. Test connection is just a ping. It's the PowerShell command for ping. It allows you to do a lot more than just do a ping. So we check quietly if the server exists and it's responding to a ping. And if it does, we create a SQL Server management object. This is my preferred way of manipulating SQL with PowerShell. And this command is one that you really should look at and write down and get into the habit of using and understand how to explore, but we'll go through that. We then go through each database in the databases collection on the server, convert the name to lower, and see if it matches. And if it does match, we put out the results. And if it doesn't match, we say, I'm really sorry, I can't find it. So if we just run that now, we can see that quite quickly it comes back. And like I said, I've run this against several hundred servers and instances with many thousand databases on, and it comes back within 20 seconds or so. So we can see that on the left we've got the list of the server names, on the right we've got the list of the database names, and as you see, it includes wildcards. We've got AdventureWorks, and we've got bad VLF, some work that I was doing on VLFs. So when a change manager comes up and says, oh, we've got a change here to reboot this particular server, which systems is it going to affect, which databases are on that server, I can very quickly just use this, just type in show databases on server and the server name. It's a little bit of a cheat. It's a cheat of a function. It just saves me a line or two of code. And literally all we're doing is grabbing our server SQL management object again, and using the pipe object from the databases array and selecting the names of all of the databases that are there. And it is as quick as doing that. You see it's come up very, very quickly. And there we got the databases on SQL 2012, Server 2012 are all of those. As I said before, the powerful thing about this is that we can manipulate these objects however we like. So I'm going to take all of the servers that are in my text file, I'm going to loop through them, and I am going to output the databases that are on every server to a text file. I do it like that. Now here's an interesting thing. In my PowerShell window, I have got the databases are on each server as follows, and that is because in my function I used write host, so that outputs to the PowerShell window rather than to the text file. Text file, we've got the actual the server name and then the database's name, as you can see here. And as you can imagine, very, very simply, you could use that to save to a share for auditing purposes. You could email it to somebody. You can insert it into a database. Anything, Excel sheets, anything you've got that you would like to do is up to you. PowerShell will take that object and you can manipulate it as you will. So I think one thing I forgot to do, we'll just generate some failures. So something strange is going on. Let's just check the error log. Don't need to log on to server, don't need to log on to Management Studio. All I need to do is run show latest SQL error log, which will give you the last 24 hours. And on here, we can see that we've got some login failures. So the junior DBA and a nosy dev trying on, somebody put the wrong connection in for their report. Those are all the login failures that we've found in the error log. And it's a nice quick way of grabbing that detail from the error log while you might be opening up Management Studio or logging onto a server and trying to do some more troubleshooting steps. Let's jump back into, there we go. So people say to me, I used to do a presentation about how to do all those functions. They say, oh, that's brilliant. Well, I really like those and I make use of them, but I don't know PowerShell. It looks really difficult. How can I learn how to do that? And how do I learn the syntax? Excuse me, well, my coffee repeats itself. How can I learn on syntax? How can you make that easier for me? Absolutely. Write this down. If you don't know about this, write this down. Use Control and J. We'll come back to Control and J in a second. Once you've got onto you've moved on a little bit, you understand syntax, you can write your own functions and you write some scripts, but you work in a team and the rest of your team are too busy. They're busy doing their own things and you're telling them how great and how simple and easy it is to use this PowerShell. Look, Rob, the bloke with the beard, he showed me how to do all this stuff and it's really quick. And they, yeah, but I'm really busy. I don't have time to learn this new stuff. Do I have to teach them? No, you don't have to teach them. Gradually, as they see the power of it, they'll want to learn more. But straight up front, you just want them to be able to access all this functionality and move forward with it and take the benefit of being able to do all these things quickly and easily. Can we make that a bit easier? Absolutely, absolutely we can. So let's jump back into the demo. Snippets, so Control and J. So as it says in there, press Control and J, and you will find this is available in PowerShell 3 onwards. You'll find a list of snippets, and next to the snippet you will see, let's do it again. Next to the snippet you'll see a description, an example, and the code that will be used. And if you press enter, then you get that into your PowerShell window, and you don't need to worry about the syntax. You don't need to remember whether it's a curly brace or a square brace or whether it's a comma or a semicolon. You can just make use of Control J, and that'll make life much easier for you. But the one thing that was missing, which I always found very surprising, was there wasn't a snippet to enable you to create a new snippet. So if you had your own code that you used repeatedly and you wanted to create a snippet for it, there wasn't a snippet to enable you to do that. So I created one. It's on my blog. It's also in this this set of scripts which are be available or which are available via my OneDrive, and the link will be up for that, and I'll tweet that as well. So I said earlier about the SQL management object for a server, and to avoid having to remember whether it's Microsoft SQL Server or Microsoft SQL Server or Microsoft Management SQL Server, I created a snippet. So I can just do Control and J, start typing SMO, and there I've got my code straight away, easy to come in. You'll notice when I create the snippet that I have had to escape out the $, which is the PowerShell for a variable, used in backtick within the code for the snippet. So let's build our own function. You have a one-off requirement to report which indexes are on which file groups. And although you're told that it's a one-off requirement, you suspect that you might have to do this again sometime in your work life. So we'll start off by defining some variables for a server and a database name. And then we will create our SMO object, which I would have used a snippet for. And we'll create a database one by using the SRV for the server for management object. Databases, square brackets, and the database name will then get you into the, we'll then create you a database object. Here's another thing to write down. So you've written down Control J, write down pipe get member. What pipe get member does is it shows you all of the properties and all of the methods that are available to that particular object. So if we look at a database object, hopefully you can see, I don't know how quickly this refreshes, but we have a whole number of methods: discover, drop, enumerate database permissions, is a member of, rename, script, and we've got a lot of properties: auto close, auto shrink, certificates, collation, database name, create name, all sorts of information that you may use. When you look at these, if you look on the right hand side, you'll see some like default file group are get, and some such as default full text catalog are get and set. So we know that via this management object you can read only the default file group, but you can read and write the default full text catalog. That's a useful piece of information to know that as you go on, you search through for the particular thing that you're doing, which ones you can do. So in this scenario, we need to find the tables property. So we've db.tables, and we'll pipe that one to get member as well. And what you'll see there, again, a lot of properties and a lot of methods, this time for the table. And here we have one called indexes. We take the indexes and pipe that to get member. And we find the parent, which will normally be the object one up in the hierarchy. So you can generally get to your server name or your database name, or in this case, your table name. And the other properties that we need, which I briefly forgot, the file group property. So what we can do is we can loop through each of these tables with a for each table in DB tables, and then we can loop through each of the indexes, and we can select the name, the parent, and the file group, which will just select the properties that we want. What we would then do is put all of that together and make sure that it gives you the required responses. And as you can see here, we have got The index is in InventionWorks 2012 AG. Name of the index, the parent, and this screen resolution is too small to show the file group, unfortunately. So your script works. At that point, you could stop and give those results back to whoever it was that asked you for them, and say, there you go, I've done that, and move on. Maybe you'd save the script, maybe you pass it, put it in a share, give it to people, and say, there you go, that's how you can do it for that script. I would say create a function and press Control J, choose your function. You could choose just a simple version like that, or if you want to, you could use the advanced function complete, which will put as much information as you possibly could need. So you've got all of your commandlet binding, all the parameters with the values from the pipeline, and you can really deep dive into making sure that it does absolutely everything that you want. You can call your function anything. If I'm doing this in person, I would normally pick on somebody like Rodney Kidd, and I'd call the function, show Rodney's camera version, just to prove that you could call it anything you want. But I would say if you're doing this in a production environment and we aren't being quite so daft, then obviously make use of the verb noun syntax that PowerShell uses, and we would call this show indexes on file groups. Once you've got your function code, you could run it. That loads it into memory so that you have that code available to you, and then you can check that it works by picking on another server, and this time we've picked the MDW database and got the name, we've got our parent, and this time our indexes aren't so long that we can fit the file group in. So that's brilliant. I've managed to get a function. I can now call that function anytime I like. How can I pass that on to my team? So what you need to do is to make use of your PowerShell profile. And there are 6 different PowerShell profiles that you can have. The easiest way of doing it is just to do notepad $profile. It'll either open if you already have a profile, or it will fail and say, I don't have this. In which case, all you do is type new item, profile, sorry, $profile, and item type file. And that would create you your new profile text file and put it into the correct place and name it correctly. So in my profile, what I used to do was load all of my management object assemblies, point out the directory where my scripts were stored, and loop through them and load them into my profile. And that meant that I could pass things on to my team by putting my functions into a shared folder, and everybody's profile would be the same and would pull the scripts from that folder. And I expect you can guess what happened next, because what happened next was some of my team who decided that PowerShell was really cool and funky started looking at the scripts, and then they started changing some of the functions, and they got put back into the share, and then everybody's functions stopped working. So we thought, actually, what we need to do is we need to source control our functions in the same way as we source control our code and we source control our databases. And that's what this piece of code here will do. And I put this into my own profile, and then I pass it on to all of my team members. If you're in a larger organization, you could easily set it up to run out of a group policy object, so that whenever somebody logs on, this would automatically be loaded into their PowerShell when they started, and that enable you to pass that on to other teams if need be, or just make sure that everybody in your team has got it. So again, I load the assemblies for this time for the Team Foundation client, because this source control is for Team Foundation. You can do the same with GitHub, but I haven't got that code here. We point out which project our PowerShell functions are held in TFS, and I distinguish between the ISD and just straight command PowerShell, just to create two different things so we know where we are. We give the workspace a name, and I give it the name of PowerShell functions, and then pull the username and the computer name using these default variables, $env username and $env : computer name. Pick the path where you want to store your functions and your TFSL. Now, in this instance, I'm using TFS Online to connect to my own visualstudio.com account, but it may be that if you've got a TFS server at work, then you would put in something along the lines of TFS server, port number, and then the path to the collection. We then simply test if the path for the functions folder exists, and if not, we create it. We connect to our collection, we connect to our version control client, and then I got a bit lazy, because no matter what I tried, I could not get the version control client to do a get latest. It refused to do it. So what I did in the end is I went to the lazy version, and I thought my PowerShell functions are not going to be too large. They're only tens of megabytes, if that. So I delete the workspace and then recreate it to load it. I know it's lazy, I know it's a hack, but I'm a DBA and it works. So we get everything that we need to by doing that. Once that's finished, I go through and load all my SQL Server assemblies, and then I do the same thing. I loop through my local path and load all the functions. So therefore, every time I reload PowerShell, I will get the latest functions from TFS with any changes that have been made. They're all version controlled, so if my team members go in and break them, we can always revert back to a previous version that actually worked. I'll also mention here that I add in the script browser and script analyzer add-ins into my ISE, which for some reason haven't actually come back in. There we go. So as you see on the right here, we've got a script browser and a script analyzer. Script analyzer is a little bit version 1. It will show you some basic errors that are in your scripts if you run it against them. But the script browser is really, really, really useful. It connects to the script center in TechNet and allows you to search for any scripts that are available there, not just PowerShell scripts, but T-SQL scripts and JavaScript and anything else that's in there. You see, I've just done a quick search here for Ola, for the Ola Halogram, and found a schedule Ola Halograms maintenance solution PowerShell script. You can just click on that, open it up in PowerShell, and away it's gone. And I make sure that I keep that code in my profile as well, so it's all loaded. Once you've done that, again, you simply pass the profile on to the rest of your team, and away we go. Everybody has the same PowerShell functions, and everybody can take advantage of the power of PowerShell. So let's imagine that we've got some more complex tasks that need to come through. We've got a service which needs a database which uses availability groups for high availability and disaster recovery. The system that creates the data cannot be exposed externally. There is a scheduled window where data refreshes are required, and errors introduced by manual refreshes cost money. This was an exact situation that I was in at a previous company, and if the refresh of the availability group was done by hand by a DBA, and when it went wrong, the amount of time it took to fix then went outside the maintenance window, which then ended up costing you money because your client was not happy with the service that they were getting and you weren't doing things in the right time, and their service was out of action for that period of time. But also, it could be for your disaster recovery runbook. And also, but I haven't changed my presentation. And also, it could be for refreshing your environments. So if you have availability group environments for your test environments, for example, so you can make sure that when your availability databases fail over, that your application is still coded to correctly use retry logic and that everything still works as it should do, you might still need to refresh those to use the latest version of your live database to make sure you're adding the right changes into copy the process that you're going to use when you deploy to live, so you can practice that process as well. And in that scenario, this script becomes very, very useful, and it is possible to put it in an agent job and enable your testers to run it. As a DBA, you're completely comfortable because you know that the testers are running the code when they need to. They're only doing the things that you've written, so they're only refreshing the database that you want them to, and they're using the correct backup files, and everything is happening consistently the same. And also, in the first occasion, you know how long it's going to take, so you know that you can fit it within your maintenance window, and the same thing will happen every time. So, quick demo rather than that page. Let's go to that's a good sign, is it? That's my availability group, which is currently broken. Haha. But okay, I will use my older refresh because that will fix it. So I'm going to set that going while we're talking. What we do here is we pick our load server up and we specify which primary servers we've got. Those are because the availability group is broken, but everything will be sorted in the end. We put in our availability group and our database name and some files, and basically we recreate our availability group in the same way as we would if we were doing it by hand. We remove the secondary database from the availability group and the async database from the availability group, and then we remove the primary from the availability group. We restore the primary using the backup of the load database, and then we back up the primary database full and log, and then restore that onto the secondary and the async with no recovery, and then re-add the databases into the availability group. And as you can see, with a little bit of green, that's exactly what we've done. We couldn't remove the secondary or the async from the availability group because they were already moved. We removed the primary, we backed the load database up, restored the primary, backed it up again, restored the secondary, restored the tertiary, added it back in. This bit here is just checking that everything's synchronized, and there is the end of the script. So if we now go back to the right, everything is green and we're happy. So if we have a look at our load database, like so, you can see hopefully when Zoom it catches up with with you that both databases have got 100,000 and 300 rows in that particular table. What we're doing at the moment is adding some data to the load database, and that's very bad. What I use to do that is a website called if I can put it on the right screen, generatedata.com. It allows you to create your data for your table. The free version will allow you to generate 100 rows. You can put in as many different column types. You can pick what type of data you're going to do, and it will create you a random set of insert statements or update statements or whatever it is that you require just by clicking generate. What I did is take that, created my insert statement, and then we run it a few thousand times so that we can see that at the bottom we've now got 200,000 rows in our load database. Once that is done, if we run this again, you'll be able to see, let's try that one. You'll be able to see that as the script runs, that the databases fall out of the availability group in the dashboard on the right, he said, and there we go, all goes red, and then the script will run and it will do a refresh. So this is always a good time to look for any questions, if anybody's got any questions. Can't see any questions in the side. So all the talking I did earlier when the first time I ran this is what I would normally be saying here, but I can tell you that in my experience I have seen massive improvement in the amount of time it's taking for testers in particular to be able to refresh the environments for themselves, because they no longer have to wait for the DBA team. And if the DBA team are busy dealing with some instance or some other requests that have come through, then the time in between the tester being ready for testing and the DBA being ready could add time. If you work in an agile environment, you want these things to happen as quickly as possible. So that has finished, and now when we do this, you can now see that the load database at the bottom has got 200,000 rows, and the availability group at the top has now also got the 200,000 rows instead of the 100. That's version 1 of the script, where you had to specify at the top, you have to specify which one was primary, which one was secondary. That's obviously not very reliable if you need to just run it automatically without looking at it. So version 2 of the script is much more complicated, has a lot more detail in it, and also enables you to run, if you have an agent job which you have, which can obfuscate or scramble your live data to get rid of any PII, personal identifiable information. So obviously you don't want any live data in your test system. You only want it to have relevant test data. We've got an agent job which will do that, and if you specify that here, then you can have that job run after you've done your refresh. And the other thing this does is it points straight at the listener, so we know that we're always going to be hitting the primary instance, and specify the availability group name, and it will determine which there we go. It determines by querying the availability group, which is the primary replica and which is the synchronous and the asynchronous nodes, and then it carries on and does the rest. I've also made use of this function called write-log, which was written by Jason Waza, which enables you to just nicely and easily create log files for your PowerShell scripts. And I won't run this script because it does exactly the same as the first one you did, but you end up with something like that when it goes wrong. And what I would recommend that you do is you create a step on the agent job that will email you the results of this log file. And so the testers get that. They check the log file. If it all says info, everybody's happy, they can carry on. If, like this one, it says error, then you say, come back and see the DBA team and we'll resolve it. So, back to the slides. Okay, where can I find out more? Choose your own personal search engine. Whichever one it is that you require, make use of it. If you're particularly interested in SQL, then I would always say put PowerShell SMO object, SMO, SQL management object, and whatever it is you're looking for. So maybe it's index, maybe it's table, maybe it's database, and that will normally put you straight to the MSDN page and you'll be able to find some information about that. You could also, I would always start on the PowerShell reference page from MSDN and if you get used to reading, they're a little bit dry at times, but if you get used to reading those pages, you can get all the information that you need. But there's a few blogs for people that blog on PowerShell. I have missed Stuart Moore from this list because he happened to be with me presenting at the same time the first time I did this presentation, so I didn't want to put it on as well. But I would say Stuart Moore, M-O-O-R-E, is definitely somebody who can whose blog is worth reading, especially if you're doing backup and restore. So, rolling on through time, hopefully what you've learned is that you can use PowerShell. That is something that you should be using. Absolutely, you should be using. You've learned how to create a function, because the function will make your code much more reusable and enable you to shorten the amount of time you spend typing if you've just got mundane queries from people. You've learned the benefit of Control J and also the benefit of get to member, and how you can use both of those to find the information and to perform the actions that you require for your role. How you can pass the knowledge on to your team, so how you can share your scripts by using a shared folder and your PowerShell profile, or how you can also put them into TFS or GitHub and make use of your PowerShell profile with your team so that everybody benefits from all your experience. You've learned it's possible to set up more complex scripts, so how you can automate things into a sort of more sort of DevOps sort of environment for your agile teams to enable you to deliver benefit quicker and with less interaction from humans, reducing your human error, but still making sure you're continuing to do everything as you should. And hopefully some places where you can go for more help. And that is the time for questions.